Hi, and welcome everyone to the Garden Hour with MU Extension. I'm Debi Kelly and horticulture specialist, of course, in Jefferson County, just south of St. Louis. As always, we're always happy to have you with us and even more delighted to get your questions and your pictures that help us to answer those questions. And so we're just delighted to be able to do that. Lots of great information that's happening today, lots of pictures that came in for this week. So we're excited to see what those are and how to solve those issues on what might be happening with your plants that are in your gardens, in your lawn, whatever it might be. So we're just happy to have you with us. We have a new person that has joined Extension. I'd like to introduce you to him. His name is Todd Higgins, and he started at the beginning of June, and he is going to be handling these four counties of Buchanan, Clinton, Clay, and Platte. So if you're on and in those areas, by all means, feel free to get a hold of Todd. And his email address is down here at the very bottom. And I don't know what's happening with the university, but that sure doesn't look like Todd Higgins' last name to me on his email. So must be lots of us out there at the university and they're switching up some of our emails, but you can always reach us at any point that you want by looking us up on the internet or coming back to the recording of this. So we're always around. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn it over to Tony, our weather person, and hopefully he has some good news for us this week. So Tony, what do you all have to share?
Well, good afternoon. It is afternoon now, and I think I do have a little bit of good news. The jury's out yet, and let's hope that some of the things that I'm going to talk about do come true. Let's see, do slideshow. There we go. The temperatures yesterday were pretty warm and most of us saw clear conditions. I'll talk a little bit about that as well. Mid 80s, upper 80s in a lot of places. Maybe a little tinge of haze in the sky, and we'll talk about that as well. Today we're expecting temperatures to be a little cooler on the eastern half of the state, maybe 70s and 80s on the eastern half of the state where we are getting some rain, and 80s on the western half. But again, you're seeing these thunderstorms and showers moving from east to west or northeast to southwest, which is kind of the wrong way when we of what we normally think about. So why is it continuing to be wrong way weather, as we say? Again, look at this from yesterday. That's the frontal system. Again, moving down from the north and from the east. So a little bit different. And with that, bringing some very dry conditions. Dew point temperatures in the 40s and 50s, which is generally considered dry for this time of year. And again, the temperatures have not been excessively hot, but because of these low dew points, we're seeing a lot of evaporation, unfortunately. Well, why is everything going backwards? Well, the last 2 weeks, we've had this blocking event in place. I looked over 55 years worth of data, and for these things to occur in North America has only happened 29 times in that period of time. And this particular event is the longest lasting in that 55-year period. So it's kind of an unprecedented weather pattern, especially for this time of year. And these kind of things tend to bring this, quote, wrong way weather for us. Again, we look at the past 30 days. There are places that are getting precipitation in southern Missouri, and then just to the northeast of, the northwest of Boone County, that's Howard County and a few other places just to our north, getting some decent precip. But most places are 2 and 4 inches below normal, some more than 4 inches below normal. Again, I can't say this enough. Please consider joining CocoRa's if you're not already on CocoRa's, and go to the Missouri Climate Center website and submit those Seymour reports. That's the third button down on the left, where you can send a picture of conditions in your yard or on your property that show how dry it is. In the last few days, well, last week we saw a little bit worsening conditions of the drought. We're up to D3 across much of central Missouri and even up near Kirksville. I expect that tomorrow's map will look similar, not really improved, but not really degraded either. So that's a little bit of good news. Now that May is done, we can summarize the entire spring across the state of Missouri. Again, I talk about those near normal temperatures for the entire spring. May was a little warm, but for the whole spring, conditions were fairly close to normal. But when you look at the precipitation deficits for the spring season across the state, you get some very impressive numbers, unfortunately. And Springfield is really one of the areas that was above normal. I looked at some dry Mays just to give you a few statistics on that. Does a dry May mean a dry summer? Well, not necessarily. It tends to lean that way, but as you can see, most of the summers after a dry May are closer to normal, although 4 of the summers were fairly dry out of these 13 driest Mays. Some were spectacular, like 1901 or 2012. And of course, in 1901, we all remember how that turned out. I'm just kidding. When you look at the worst droughts, you can see that a lot of these droughts are long-term prospects. And that's kind of what we're facing here this year right now. If you've noticed that the sky has been hazy and a little bit with a brown tinge in the last week or so, it's due to the forest fires in the Canada. That blocking event is bringing that bad air up and around down through the Northeast United States. Even St. Louis and Kansas City have some air quality advisories out. So if you feel like you're getting a little scratchy in the throat or the eyes are burning, it might be this smoke that's coming from the forest fires in Canada. And again, just to show this blocking, I showed this similar map last week that we had this high pressure over the continental United States, this closed high pressure, and circulation goes clockwise around that. So that's why our weather seems to be moving in the wrong direction. I had a few people tell me yesterday, oh, we thought you were running the radars backwards on TV, because it looked like the precipitation again was going the wrong way, and it really is. All right, we have anomalously high pressure over Canada. Anomalously low pressure has been developing along the southern tier of states. And again, that forces an eastward or an easterly wind rather than a westerly, and brings those storms in the wrong direction, so to speak. Again, the models are teasing us and saying that Saturday and Sunday are looking good for precipitation, as much as an inch, maybe 2 and maybe 2.5 inches for some places. Now, even if this does pan out and happen, that's great news, but it doesn't solve our problem entirely. So let's keep our fingers crossed that the models are not teasing us this time. We've been looking at the summer outlook for a while, so we'll skip over that. 6 to 10 day outlook is actually looking good. We're looking at below normal temperatures for this time of year and above normal chances for precipitation, not strongly, but at least somewhat. So I'm encouraged by this outlook. You look 3 to 4 weeks down the road or toward the end of June. Again, a little bit of a stronger chance of above normal temperatures, but again, look at this, above normal precipitation chances throughout some of the mid-plains states, including Missouri, as well as the Northwest. And this could be great news. Again, if this really does develop, that's going to be very good news for us. How are we looking across the state? Well, today, many of us are seeing clouds, hearing a rumble of thunder already. We should see highs reaching the lower 80s for most places. And then tonight, thunderstorms will be tapering off. We'll see some cooler conditions. Most of us will see low to upper 50s from north to south. Tomorrow, beautiful, high in the upper 70s if you're in the northern part of Missouri, lower 80s elsewhere. That's good news because cooler temperatures means less evaporation. So this is really good news. Thursday night, some of you may see temperatures down in the upper 40s north of Route 36, but mid 50s elsewhere. Friday, around 80 for most places, maybe low to mid 80s, and then clear low in the upper 50s Friday night. Unless you live in an urban area, then the heat island effect will keep you around 60 degrees. And of course, the heat island effect is a real thing. Saturday and Sunday. Saturday, we'll see clouds moving in. Saturday afternoon, showers and thunderstorms developing. I expect that to be fairly widespread Saturday night. Temperatures will be warm on Saturday and humid, upper 80s to near 90s, low around 60 to 65. But Sunday, look at that again, in the upper 70s and cooler, and clouds retreating. Sunday night, clearing again with lows as cool as 50 degrees north of Route 36, but mid 50s elsewhere. And then Monday and Tuesday will return to clear conditions. Highs around 80 statewide on Monday, mid 80s Tuesday, Monday night in the mid 50s, and Tuesday night in the low to mid 60s. So a promising forecast. A little better news than previous ones, but and let's keep our fingers crossed that that emerges. Any questions?
Are there any questions for Tony? All right. Well, as always, we appreciate you being with us and telling us the forecast, and hopefully we'll get some rain across the state in some areas because I know it's much needed. I did the exact same thing, crossed both hands, both fingers. So I got that. I had one small clap of thunder a short while ago, and just it kind of spit on my area enough to make everything look wet. But not enough to do much. It was just like a tease. So here's hoping we get more rain. Kelly has changed her name to Ask Questions Here. So if you've got a question, you can go ahead and click on Ask Questions Here. You might want to put your email address in there in case we don't have an opportunity to answer that question for you. That way we'll be able to get back in touch with you at a later date. What I'd like to do now is go ahead and turn it over to Dhruba, and he's going to be our moderator for today. So Dhruba, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Devi. So my name is Dhruba Dhakal, and I am a horticulture specialist. I'm housed in Cole County at Jeff City, and I am going to moderate this session today. So we received a number of questions. So the first question we received today is, what is the remedy of the gall, and should I trim the affected leaves? And what can I do for leaf gall on an ornamental bush? So My colleague, Tamra Reall, is going to answer this question. Tamra, go ahead, please.
Thank you so much. So we actually received multiple calls about galls this week, not just submitted to the Garden Hour, but also to our various locations. So we wanted to definitely talk about galls. So basically, a gall is an abnormal vegetative growth on plants. So it can happen many different ways. You can see in these pictures that there are many different kinds of galls. Some of them are woody, some of them look more like, or they'll be more vegetative and soft. Some of them are actually fuzzy. Some of them will be open and many of them will be closed. Here are some more pictures of galls. I just wanted to show you because there are so many different kinds of galls. In fact, there's over 1,500 different gall-causing organisms. And most galls are actually caused by irritation or stimulation of the plant cells. This could be due to feeding from various insects or mites. It could be from egg laying. There are lots of different kinds of organisms that can cause them: aphids, midges, mites, wasps. There's also bacteria, fungi, nematodes that also can be part of causing this action with plants. So here are some more pictures. Many different kinds, and they can be fuzzy, smooth, knobs, lumps, warts, and all of these are going to be characteristic of the organism that's interacting with the plant. You can see that there's also a range of colors: red, green, yellow, black, many different kinds. The weather and plant susceptibility, as well as the plant populations, can also affect when, where, and how these are found on different plants. It's really important to note a couple of things. One, there is no health hazard for humans or your pets from the galls. Also, plant gall damage is not usually considered a serious problem. It's usually aesthetic. So affected trees or shrubs can show a little bit of injury, and that's usually not a problem overall for health. If it's a young plant, it sometimes can completely deform the plant, and then that could be an issue. So looking specifically at the questions that we got today, these are the pictures that came in, and you can see that we have a range of different kinds of galls that came in on the plants, and it looks different underneath the leaf versus on top of the leaf. Sometimes you could have different insects or different organisms that are causing that gall. So what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through my recommendations and how I get there using our traditional IPM checklist. So let's look at how to identify, evaluate, prevent, action, and monitor. In identifying this, it's easy to just say these are plant galls, and that's actually where I'm going to end because I don't know where, or I haven't been able to open these up to be able to see if there's a specific insect inside of it. But we do know that it's a plant gall and not a worse problem for the plant. We can look at evaluating, are they causing harm? Most likely in these specific instances, no. I don't think that they are really truly causing harm to the plant. It's aesthetically perhaps displeasing, and if it is, then keep going. So to prevent, it may not be necessary. If this doesn't bother you, then don't worry about it. For some plants, you can actually put on a dormant spray early in the spring to prevent the insects from getting to the plants, at the area where that they might feed or sting or otherwise cause this interaction with the plants. There are some actions that you can take once it's already occurred. Spraying a pesticide is not going to help because if there is an insect or mite inside of this, they are very well protected and the insecticide will never reach them. And so then you're just subjecting yourself or the environment to chemicals that are unnecessary. So what you would do is you would prune out the affected leaves, twigs, branches, or flowers, or whatever it is that's affected. And then you might double bag it and throw it away or burn it so that those organisms are not able to emerge later. And then just continue to observe your plants. If you decided to just leave them there, that's fine. You might just not worry about it, or you might be like me and actually enjoy watching the interaction. I find it very interesting, and so I hope that you would too. I am going to add one more thing. There was recently, this last week, this was in the news, a new discovery about a relationship between ants, oaks, and the wasp. So these wasps will actually they'll cause a gall in the oak tree. They'll manipulate the oak tree to produce this gall around them. And then they manipulate the ants to retrieve the galls to their nest. And then in the nest, the wasp larvae are protected from the predators and may even receive other benefits. So there's so much that we're learning about the insect world, so much more to learn. I just thought this was really, really cool. I'll put the link in the chat. So that's it for today. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Tamra. Kelly, is there any question for Tamra on this? Okay, so I don't hear anything, maybe not. Okay, so the next question is about the best time to harvest the snap peas. Let me share my screen, so I am going to answer that question. Okay, can you see my screen? Yes, can you see my screen?
It's not in presenter mode yet.
Give me a second. Where is that display setting? Okay, how is that now?
Perfect.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. Okay, so the question was, when is the best time to harvest snap peas? So as by the name of the sugar snap pea, we eat the whole pod. So we need to harvest them when the pods are green and they are still tender. So when we check, when we go to the garden to check the pods, whether they are ready to harvest or not, so we can open a few of the pods and look the seeds inside. And if the seeds inside the pod, so they started to swell and they are not fully developed, so it is the right time to harvest those pods. So in this picture at the right side, we can see the size of seeds inside the snap pea in contrast to the selling pea. So if you go to your garden and open the pods and find seeds, something like that, so they have, so those seeds are formed and they just started to swell. So that means it is the right time to harvest those pods. So this is my answer about this question. So we also received the second questions about when is the good time to pick gooseberries. So we can harvest gooseberries at 2 different stages depending on how we are going to use them. So we can harvest them when they are fully sized, but they are still formed and they are yellow-green color, as like in this picture in the right side. So at this stage, the fruit will be quite tart, but this is a favored ripening stage for many culinary uses. So if we do not harvest the gooseberries at this stage, and the fruit will continue to ripen and they will soften and they turn into the dark red or purple color. So the fruit develops some sweetness at this stage if they are like those dark red or purple color. And this is a good stage to harvest if the fruit is to be used for like as a jam or making a pie, something like that. So that's all about these 2 questions. Let me go ahead and our next topic is I see a sick plant, and Peng Tian is going to talk about that. Peng, so please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dhruba. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the session of I See Sick Plants. I'm showing you photos of watermelon leaves. This was from one of my colleagues. And as you can see that the majority of the watermelon leaves are showing the yellow spots with white center. They were having different size, and they were everywhere. I can tell from this photo that more than 90%, maybe 100% of leaves were affected by this. So I give you 30 seconds to guess what could be the cause for those spots. Thank you, Jared. So the first one is genetic. Second one is chemical damage. The third one, power washing damage. You must be familiar with my previous maple tree diseases. And then insect damage, maybe flea beetle, right? They're flying around. The last one is bacteria infection, normally very prevalent in the rainy and humid weather, right? Okay, I'll give you 10 more seconds. All right. Yeah. All right. So let me end the poll and share the results. So as we actually has chemical damage and a bacteria infection, so the number is one is 12, the other is 13. We have 3 people vote for insects and 4 people for the power washing, and only 1 out of 33 voted for genetic. So the answer is we have 1 winner. It is actually genetic. So this is actually due to the variegation. This is a specific variety of watermelon. I cited from the website of the seed company. They have a description of this variety, basically saying that you can see the large silver dollar to pink pea-sized moons on dark green and a yellow speckled, slightly ridged, thick skin. And there's numerous stars and leaves have the yellow spots as well. So basically, this is associated with a genetic phenotype. And that's why you will see a very high percentage of plants showing the symptoms. There's no need for controlling this disease, and the plant will not decline. I congratulate to the only 1 out of 33 participated. I look forward to see you in the next I See Sick Plants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peng. Yeah, so you treat all of us. Okay, so the next question we received in our garden hour this week is about the native plant. So the question is, what is our best resource if we are interested in starting a native plant garden in our yard? So our colleague, Kelly McGowan, is going to answer that question. Kelly, please go ahead.
All right, thank you. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So we had a question about resources for incorporating native plants into your home landscape. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So first, let's start out with why grow native plants. You know, we hear a lot about native plants. I know in the extension offices, we get a lot of questions about native plants, but why? Why would we want to grow native plants? Well, there's a lot of great reasons. Native plants are better acclimated to our weather and climate here in Missouri. And as you all know, being residents of Missouri, we have some, you know, pretty crazy temperature fluctuations. We have crazy weather fluctuations. We have heavy precipitation, no precipitation. We just never know what we're going to get. And native plants have adapted to that over time. And so a great example of this was last summer. You know, we had a summer of excessive heat and drought. We're still getting reports of plants being lost, even trees and shrubs. but we haven't had any reports of our native trees and shrubs and plants suffering, and that's because they're better acclimated to those kinds of weather conditions. So that is certainly a good reason to grow them just with that. Once the plants are established, they are considered pretty low maintenance. Now, they are not no maintenance, but there's not a lot that needs to be done. It really depends on the plant. Some benefit from, pruning back and different things, but for the most part, they're pretty low maintenance, which is a really good reason as well. Our native plants have very few insect pest and disease issues like some of our traditional landscape plants. They also use less water than our traditional landscape plants, which is also a good thing and helps to save us money. They provide food and habitat for our pollinators and wildlife. In addition to native plants, you might also consider native trees and shrubs. I often get asked, well, I don't want to plant an oak tree. I'll never be able to enjoy it in my lifetime. Well, you might not be able to enjoy the full mature tree in your lifetime, but you will be able to enjoy it for many years. And these trees typically grow faster than we give them credit for, especially if they're planted correctly and cared for early on. They can grow faster than people realize and give us some benefits that way. Another reason to grow native plants is their beauty. There's a lot of incredibly beautiful native plants in a very wide variety as well. And that's better than watching TV. Go out and sit around your native plantings and just watch all of the wildlife and pollinators that you'll see hanging out around those plants. It's pretty fascinating, and I think it's better than watching TV. So we could probably do a whole hour just on our favorite natives, but I did just put a few in here. Common milkweed. Now, of course, there's lots of different types of milkweed. The common is in bloom right now here in Southwest Missouri, and I was out looking at mine last night, and it was just covered in bumblebees and butterflies and all kinds of pollinators. And it's just a plant that is typically planted for monarch caterpillars because milkweed is their host plant, but the flowers are hugely attractive to all of our pollinators. Indian pink. My Indian pink is in full bloom right now at my house. It's an incredibly beautiful native and a good plant to attract hummingbirds. In the middle, we have buttonbush, which is a great flowering shrub native to Missouri, also very attractive to pollinators. And then American elderberry is also one of my favorite native shrubs. But there's lots and lots of natives, and like I said, we could spend the whole hour talking about that. So if you want to be successful with native plants, I've put a few tips here to keep in mind. When it comes to native plants, we want to treat them a little bit differently than our traditional landscape plants and our annuals and things like that. They don't need a ton of water. You don't want, once they're established plants, you're not going to have to water them like you do your vegetable plants or your annual flowers. So keep that in mind. They actually don't like too much water. It can hurt them. It can kill them. So once they're established, make sure that you're not overwatering or over mulching. Our native plants are used to our native soil. They're not used to our beautiful, rich, organic garden soil that we typically think of when we plant our vegetables or flowers. So don't over mulch, don't over amend your native plants, your native plant areas. They can do just fine in our native soils. Be patient. When you first buy native plants, they're going to be pretty small. They're not going to be large at all. And that first year, and sometimes even 2 years, they're just kind of putting down their roots in the soil and they're getting established in their new home. So just be patient with them the first couple of growing seasons. Keep them watered. They do need water when they're new plants, but once they're established, they will be fine on their own. So just be patient with them and you will be rewarded for your patience. One thing that you might do is start small. If you're wanting to start incorporating native plants into your landscape, Start small. Just purchase a few plants, incorporate them into what you already have. There's nothing wrong with having a mix of hybrid plants and native plants. So if you've never grown natives before, start with just a few, learn about them, and then you can expand later on. You don't have to have a 1-acre prairie to grow native plants. You can have just a few in your home landscape, and that'll be fine as well. Learn as much as you can about the different types of native plants and their habitats. Do they prefer sun? Do they prefer shade? Do they prefer wet areas? Do they prefer woodland areas? And I'm going to show you a great resource to help you learn about them just here in a moment. Be aware that some neighbors may not see the beauty in native plants. I've heard this time and time again, especially in urban areas. Sometimes people consider native plants to be messy. They don't sometimes look like our traditional landscape plants that are very neat, have a certain shape, stay in their place. So just keep that in mind. If you have neighbors that, are pretty picky about a perfect lawn, they might not see the same beauty that you do. And that, may not make any difference, but I have had heard of some disputes between neighbors over native plantings. I think it's crazy, but some people just don't know much about native plants and the benefits that they have. And if you're going to be including native plants or any kind of plants, make sure you have things that are going to be blooming throughout the year. Make sure that you have things that are going to start blooming in early spring through our first frost, because our pollinators and wildlife are dependent on food, throughout that entire time. Okay, let's see if we can get this to advance here. Oh, there we go. All right, so here's the resource I wanted to share with you. This is called grownative.org, and it's a website specific to Missouri. And this website has all kinds of wonderful information about native plants to Missouri. So right up here, it says Native Plant Database. Take a look at that if you want to learn more about native plants. There's just a great information there. There's also information on here about events where you can purchase native plants and growers of native plants and just all kinds of other resources that'll be very helpful if you want to get into growing native plants and learn more about them. So Dhruba, that's what I have.
All right, thank you very much, Kelly. So our next topic is on the horticulture terminology, and Debi Kelly is going to do that. Debi, please.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just want to say thank you, Peng, for showing that picture. One of the things about the moons and stars variety of the watermelon, when we teach our horticulture master gardener classes, one of the things I always stress to the students, as the participants, is that know how that plant grows. And moon and stars is definitely one of those plants that you need to pay attention to, that's its variety and it's not something else. So thank you for doing that one. I appreciate that. That's a good thing to think about. So horticulture terminology, catkins. What is a catkin? So is it a plant in a related family grouping? Specific technique used to keep cats from messing in the garden? Elongated drooping clusters of flowers. So Jared, if you can open up the poll there for me and we'll see what folks think about it. People are really good about their horticulture terminology. I've been so impressed with you guys out there. Looks like there's one answer that's just really popping up. Just give you another couple of seconds here. All righty, so end the poll and share the results. So the results are showing that C, 81% of you say that it's C, it's the elongated drooping clusters of flowers. And 13% say plants in a related family, and 6% say it's a specific technique used to keep cats out of the garden. Man, if I could figure out a specific technique to keep cats out of the garden, I would be the first one to tell all of you, because I've got lots of cats that live across the street that live in the garage, and she keeps that garage door open a couple of inches on a consistent basis. So they are always over in my yard and in my garden. So I don't like that. C is the answer. So you guys are pretty smart when it comes to that. So here are examples of catkins. They can happen on lots of different kinds of plants. We normally think of them as being on trees. It also has another name called a ment. And so it's usually a dense, elongated, drooping cluster of flowers without petals. And like I said, predominantly on trees. And so you can see those there. This is a cottonwood tree. These last two pictures that are in my yard. If any of you want to come dig out this big, gigantic cottonwood tree, you are more than welcome to do that, because to me, it's a nuisance. But looking up, you can see here, it's already in the cotton, what I call the cotton stage. As a cluster of flowers. Here's one that I picked up, the small branch fell onto the ground. And so you could see the actual different parts of the actual pieces of that catkin right there. And then it'll open up and release its seed. And in this instance, it's actually that cotton. And sometimes I look out my back window and I feel like it's snowing in late spring, early summer. So congratulations to you all. You guys are smart.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. So our next topic is friend or foe, and Tamra is going to talk about that. Tamra, please.
All right, let me get all of this up. I do have a new friend or foe for you. And I just activated the poll. So go ahead and look at this and tell me whether you think this is a friend, foe, neither. We do say it depends, but try and decide whether it's a friend or foe or neutral. I'll give you a few more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results. All right. So many of you say that this is a friend, though I watched. It was kind of a toss-up on whether it was a friend or foe. So you are right. I said that this was a friend, though I did also say it's kind of a neutral. So this is a springtail. There are 700 species of this tiny insect in North America. There's more than 6,000 worldwide. These are tiny, usually less than 6 millimeters long, and often only about 1 to 2 millimeters. They have this really cool little structure called a furcula on them. You can see it right down in here. So what it can do is it can actually lock onto another structure and then flick it. And this causes the springtail to just spring, to leap up into the air. They can leap 3 to 4 inches in a single motion. That's about 100 times their body length. So some things that can happen, though, is they actually can aggregate, and we start getting some of these calls either when it's really wet or when it's really, really dry. And so what happens is these springtails are usually found in leaf litter. And when we get these odd conditions, when it's super wet or when it's super dry, they have to leave their typical habitat. And they might have these aggregations on your porch, on your driveway, in wherever they can. And it can be a little bit alarming when you see this big mass of something that kind of is writhing and little bits are leaping. Usually, though, what happens is this mass disappears in a day or two. If you do need to remove it, just spray it. Just spray it with some water to disperse it, to wash it away. You don't need to do anything more than that. Sometimes, though, they can get into your home. And this happens occasionally, not too often. Usually prevention is the way that we can keep them out. So if you can restrict the entry, you can use caulk, you can use weather stripping, screening around the doors, windows, cracks. Remember that they're really, really small, so they can get in if you don't get everything, which can be hard to do. Now, if they are in your home, you can vacuum them up. But really what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to figure out why they are staying in your home. And that usually means that there's a leak or some sort of moisture issue. So if you fix the moisture issue, they go away. No chemicals needed. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Tamra. So our next topic is about the rose rosette. So Debbie is going to talk about that.
Yeah, thank you. So rose rosette is something that people really don't ever want to hear about, unfortunately. Rose rosette, or RRD, is what folks can also see it as. So here are a couple of pictures of rose rosette as the flower, the stem with the rose flower at the very end, and then a full bush. Notice how the stem here looks totally different from the stem here. Notice how this growth is growing versus this growth over here. So coming soon is when we're going to start to see this, which is why we wanted to let you know about it. It is a virus-like pathogen, and it is fatal, unfortunately, and it likes the Rosa family. So just about anything that's in that Rosa family can get rose rosette, even if it's not a rose, but it is part of the rose family, you can still get it. It is spread by an insect. So an insect, if it's spread by an insect, it's called a vector. And it's a very tiny, even more so tinier than our regular mites, two-spot mites. This is a tiny, and I don't know how to pronounce this correctly. I'm sure Tamra could correct me, being the insect person here. Areophyid is how I would pronounce that. It's a mite. It's extremely tiny, and it generally travels on the wind. So being as tiny as it is, it's not going to travel as far on the wind, but it will travel on the wind to nearby plants. It really does. Its preferential food source that it likes to go to is the multiflora rose, and we know that is an invasive plant, and so we've been trying to make folks aware of that so that they can remove that. It does like knockout roses. And generally, if you see a lot of knockout roses, just keep an eye out on your roses, especially the knockouts, to verify. Keep scouting, keep looking, keep watering, keep admiring your roses. These symptoms usually appear in mid-July, but start being aware of it so that you can kind of catch it pretty quick, because once it actually gets into the rose, you do need to dig the rose out and totally remove it. Yes, we don't want to remove our roses because we love them, but if you don't want it to spread to other roses in your garden area, try to go ahead and take that out as quickly as you can. So what are some of those symptoms? We'll have the reddish leaves, and you notice on that first slide, I motioned and said, look at that growth. So we're going to have those red leaves. The elongation of the shoots. So we know a rose is going to shoot up the stem and we'll have a beautiful bud and a flower at the end. When it's rose rosette, they'll be even longer than normal. And a lot of times those stems will be red. You can see it's starting to be red here. This is going to develop into a stem with some leaves. The leaves will also be distorted. They're not going to look normal at all. And we'll have lots of abnormal growths and shoots and thorns. So if you notice, look at all the thorns that are on the stem here as compared to a normal stem for a rose. True indications of rose rosette. And then it develops, it can develop what we call a witch's broom. So if you think of a regular broom, and if you turn that broom upside down where the handle is a stem and the top part of that broom is up, our rose bushes are going to start looking like that brooming appearance of a regular broom that we might use in our house. If the flowers actually get to be able to bud out and to flower, they will be very distorted flowers looking. This is a systemic disease, so it will start in one section of the plant and it will move throughout the entire plant and well into the roots as well. So once you've got it, it's going to go ahead and it's going to be fatal. Dig it out as quickly as you can so it doesn't spread. The one thing we do want to caution you about is that if anyone is using glyphosate anywhere near the roses and there's any drift that happens, some of these symptoms that are similar to rose rosette will also be similar to any kind of glyphosate spread or drift onto your roses. So make sure that you pay attention to how you're caring for the roses, what type of herbicides that you're actually using, if there's any potential drift. And if there hasn't been, then pay attention to see if the symptoms are rose rosette, and then go ahead and remove your rose bushes. That's all I've got.
All right, thank you, Devi. So our next topic is phytoplasma disease, and Peng Tian is going to talk about that. Peng, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Let's talk about phytoplasma diseases for the plant. So I would like to give you an overview about plant pathogens. We all know the first criminal is the fungi. Based on the symptoms, it's not that difficult to identify. They normally have really dry lesion with a defined border. And sometimes you can see the visible hyphae, those fluffy hyphae on the top of the leaves. Sometimes they can produce fruiting body and cankers on the trunk. So this is anthracnose, curling, dry lesions, powder mildew, very powdery and fluffy fungal structure growing. See, not too bad, not too hard for identifying fungi. The second one is bacteria. I give the treats of bacterial disease as slimy, smelly, wet without defined border, oozing or frothing cankers, and sometimes bacteria can cause galls. Those are two examples: soft rot on the potato and fruit blotch of the cucurbits. They are very smelly, trust me. They're way much more stinky than the fungal infection, fungal rot. The third one is virus. Their symptoms are very visible, normally colored with mottling or mosaic pattern or distorted tissues. Here are the two examples: the tobacco mosaic virus on peony, which I received a sample last year. The second one is tomato spotted wheel virus. I'm actually expecting a sample sent to my lab this week, so I'm gonna test this virus. That's not hard, right? We have fungi, we have bacteria, we have virus. So what is phytoplasma? So phytoplasma is a bacteria-like organism that lack cell walls. They're not easy to be identified because they only survive on and reproduce in the living plant. That means we cannot culture that on plates. This is one critical part of my diagnosis. I need to isolate the pathogen and grow on the media and look at it on a microscope or use a molecular assay to identify that. But I cannot do that for this specific organism because they can only live on the living tissue. One method to identify that is use the electron microscope to determine whether it is this is phytoplasma or virus, because the symptoms can be easily confused with virus. In addition, they are resistant to most antibiotics, but is susceptible to tetracycline. Let's talk about phytoplasma disease symptoms. One of the most important symptoms is stunted and distorted growth. You may see some rolling leaves and eventually turn to be the tree or plant dieback. One of the most famous or important phytoplasma disease is called aster yellow. And you can definitely see that the infection of the phytoplasma triggers some hormonal disorder so that you may have some overgrowth symptoms on the top of the flower, maybe, or whatever you call. And on the soybean, you can see their cluster flower that look definitely abnormal. For the transmission of the disease, this is a brief life cycle of the disease. It was transmitted by an insect called leafhopper. They can inject or feed on the plant and acquire the phytoplasma from phloem. And then this phytoplasma can stay in the body of the leafhopper for 20 to 50 days. Once the leafhopper started feeding any other plant, that's how they transmitted those phytoplasma to the healthy plants. Eventually, you will have different type of the symptoms showed up. This is cause big threats to at least canola production. I'm from Florida. I came here in Missouri 2 years ago. One of my projects working on is lethal yellowing or lethal browning disease. This is also caused by a novel phytoplasma reported in 2006. And there are 3 major palm trees, maybe 4 major palm trees was super susceptible. So basically, if the palm tree get this disease, there's a dead end. One of the tree called Canary Island date palm, they consider that palm tree as the most beautiful palm tree in Florida. However, this palm tree is also the most susceptible ones. Each palm tree, including the cost of the tree itself, as well as installation and maintenance, it's over $15,000. But once you get the palm tree, the phytoplasma, it will slowly showing in the lower canopy, then climb on the top. Eventually, it will collapse. Those are the symptoms showing in different type of palm tree. Of course, we don't have palm tree in Missouri, but we do have phytoplasma diseases. Miss Debi Kelly just talked about the rose, and we just received a photo from one of my colleagues and showing the photo of the rose shown, and we suspect also phytoplasma disease. And you can tell they definitely have some hormonal disorder, producing kind of like overgrowth, a symptom of overgrowth. And there's still some reddish, but still overall, they're a little bit different with the virus, which is what Ms. Debi Kelly mentioned about the rose rosette disease. How to tell the difference? Since one is virus, the other bacteria, we can always go through the molecular techniques to extract the DNA to run the specific assay for identifying phytoplasma. So if you have any question for phytoplasma, let me know. We do have the assay to test them. The last slide, of course, is disease control. How can we control this disease? Unfortunately, there's no cure like the rose rosette disease. You have to remove the disease plant quickly. I saw lots of a palm tree was cut immediately will test positive of the phytoplasma in Florida. Control the leafhopper and other insects, which may be also vectors. Use some resistant plants. Recently, many weeds was identified with phytoplasma positive. However, they didn't show up the symptoms. So that make it's even harder to control this disease. So weed control is very important to contain this disease. There are some chemical method, which is antibiotic injection. Like I said, it is susceptible to tetracycline. And if you have some tree diseases infected by the phytoplasma, it can be used. But if you have a shrub or even the hibiscus, the plants like aster yellow, it may be hard to use the antibiotic injection method. That should be all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Peng. So with this talk on phytoplasma disease, so we conclude our talks on the questions and the special topics today. So I will get back to our host, Debi. So Debi, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Great information here with everything and what everyone's presented today. So thank you to my colleagues for doing this every week. I appreciate each and every one of you, and including Jared, who's behind the scenes that does all the technology piece for us. So we got to make sure he gets a thank you as well. So again, here is the map with all of us that are here. I know Tamra's going to drop into the chat box a link where you can find this map if it's not kept up long enough for you to grab everybody's email address. We are on via YouTube Live. So if you can't join us via Zoom, you can join us via YouTube. So always happy. And this is being recorded, so you can go back to the YouTube channel and you can watch this over again if you missed something and want to listen to it again, or if you missed a week and want to learn whatever those questions were that we answered on that particular day. I'm sorry, I did not update the future times, but we're here every Wednesday from noon to 1 p.m. So please join us all the way through the growing season. We're here every week. If you want to grab some of those links that are in the chat box, just go into that chat box, and where you see where you're going to write a chat, there should be 3 little dots. Mine is up at the top right. Yours might be in a different location in your little chat box down here. Right click on that, and then you can save those to your own computer there. Again, our page there. And then we always love getting your questions, because we know there are lots of questions out there, and no question is a stupid question. So if you've got it, chances are someone else does. We are more than happy. Just go back out to ipm.missouri.edu/town halls and go ahead and re-sign up. Don't worry, you're only going to get 1 email reminder every Wednesday morning to join us. But go ahead and do that, and you can upload a picture as well now. And so we greatly appreciate the pictures. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week.